You don't arrive at a moment like this by accident. You arrive because something in you refused to collapse in a year that was never built to cradle you gently. Before we step into the idea of 2026, before we even let ourselves dream about it, we need to acknowledge the weight of 2025. Not the calendar version of it, but the lived version. The one that left fingerprints on your spirit. The one that quietly reshaped you while you were busy trying to survive it. 2025 didn't glide past you. It leaned into you. It pressed its palms against your chest and said, "Let's see what's real." It stripped layers you didn't even realize you were wearing. It removed comfort not as a punishment, but as a scalpel removes what cannot heal. It demanded more of you than you ever planned to give. More patience, more strength, more endurance, more resilience. And you gave it. Not heroically, not proudly, but because you had no other choice except to keep going. There were mornings when you opened your eyes already tired. Bone deep tired. Soul deep tired. The kind of exhaustion that no nap can soften. The kind that feels like a bruise under your ribs. There were nights when your mind replayed every disappointment like a playlist stuck on loop. When you stared into silence and wondered if it was listening back. When you whispered prayers that felt like letters mailed without an address. You carried hope like a fragile flame in a hurricane, shielding it even when it burned your palms. You carried unanswered prayers, not because you were foolish, but because you were faithful. You carried delayed blessings, not because you enjoyed the waiting, but because you believed the waiting had a meaning. You carried strength you never requested, and yet, that strength arrived anyway, built inside you like an underground bunker, reinforced every time something didn't work out, every time someone left, every time life rerouted you without explanation. In the quiet moments, the ones you don't post about, those were the loudest teachers of all. There were moments when you questioned everything. Am I being punished? Am I being ignored? Am I forgotten? Am I being tested beyond reason? There were moments when you wondered if maybe the universe had skipped you in the distribution of grace. When you wondered if you missed a sign, took a wrong turn, or misunderstood your own potential. When you felt like you were watching your life from outside a foggy window, close enough to touch, but blurred enough to confuse you. But here's the truth that finally lands without static. 2025 was not designed to reward you. It was designed to prepare you. It was preparation disguised as pressure, construction disguised as collapse, growth disguised as grief. The universe was not shutting doors to wound you. It was closing escape routes that would have led you away from the version of you that was finally forming. It wasn't rejection. It was redirection. It wasn't abandonment. It was reassignment. It wasn't silence. It was transmission delay, calibrating you to receive something you weren't built to carry earlier. Nothing about what you endured was random. The delays were not glitches. The endings were not miscalculations. The heartbreaks were not accidents. The setbacks were not signposts of failure. They were signs of refinement. You were not being broken. You were being reconfigured for resonance. There is a law that governs every evolution in existence. Nothing ascends to a higher state without first releasing what cannot ascend with it. A tree cannot reach higher without shedding leaves that have completed their purpose. A butterfly cannot emerge without dissolving the body it once needed. Rivers cannot flow forward while dragging old dams. And humans cannot transform while gripping identities that were only meant to be temporary scaffolding. 2025 forced the unhooking. It asked you to let go of versions of yourself that survived, but were never meant to flourish long term. It confronted you with patterns that once felt normal but had quietly expired. It nudged you toward solitude, not to isolate you, but to detox you from borrowed frequencies, from emotional highs that were never sourced from your own alignment, from relationships that gave you intensity but not longevity, from goals that gave you motion but not meaning, from identities that gave you survival but not fulfillment. And here's the paradox you lived through. You wanted things to stay the same, but you also wanted things to change. You prayed for expansion, but feared the demolition it required. You asked for clarity, but panicked during the silence that delivered it. You wanted alignment, but fought the recalibration period. That conflict is the emotional signature of being between stations, between identities, between realities, between frequencies, between who you were and who you are now becoming. The discomfort was not evidence of depression. It was evidence of departure. The numbness was not a breakdown. It was a threshold symptom, like anesthesia before emotional surgery, like the loading screen before an upgrade, like the quiet cocoon phase before embodiment. Think about how much you actually changed without noticing the moment it happened. You stopped chasing what drained you. You stopped shrinking yourself to fit rooms that once applauded you. You stopped confusing attachment with destiny. You stopped bargaining for love that required you to betray yourself. You stopped glorifying struggle as a prerequisite for worthiness. You stopped settling for intensity when what you really needed was truth. You didn't lose your softness. You purified it. You didn't lose your faith. You armor tested it until it became immovable. You didn't lose direction. You lost distractions that once felt like direction. And that shift didn't happen because you suddenly became perfect. It happened because you finally became intolerant of the wrong signal. When your tolerance for the misaligned drops to zero, your life begins rearranging itself automatically. That is not crisis. That is clarity settling into the bones. You were being prepared, but not like a student being trained, more like an instrument being tuned, slowly, invisibly, with micro adjustments you only notice in hindsight. Pressure teaches discernment. Silence teaches self-hearing. Endings teach detachment. Delays teach surrender. Discomfort teaches honesty. Loss teaches alignment. Solitude teaches inner signal recognition. Rejection teaches redirection without resentment. Waiting teaches worthiness without urgency. Transformation teaches embodiment without performance. And now, the preparation cycle is complete, because 2026 is not asking you to survive it. 2026 is asking you to receive it. Receive peace without questioning its permanence. Receive opportunity without interrogating its timing. Receive love without confusing it for rescue. Receive abundance without bracing for collapse. Receive alignment without needing chaos to validate it. Receive clarity without demanding repetition. Receive the new without needing the old to applaud your departure. Receive your own frequency without needing borrowed highs to feel alive. But receiving requires surrender. And surrender is not weakness. Surrender is releasing timelines you built out of fear. Releasing identities you built out of survival. Releasing narratives you built out of disappointment. Releasing emotional loops you built out of unfinished business. Releasing people you built into gods instead of companions. Releasing intensity you mistook for destiny. Releasing search mode as your default state. Releasing the belief that pain is proof of progress. Surrender is trusting that life is happening for you, even when it's not happening loudly. You stayed when leaving would have been easier. You stayed when logic suggested surrender was foolish. You stayed when heartbreak said, close the dial. You stayed when doubt said, maybe this is your ceiling. You stayed when hope felt heavier than resignation. You stayed when silence felt like exile. You stayed when you felt numb, but not defeated. You stayed long enough to evolve past what once entertained you. That matters more than you know, because the universe responds to endurance with elevation. What's coming won't crash into your life the way 2025 did. It will arrive softly, calmly, seamlessly, like alignment feels when it's finally embodied. Opportunities that open without panic. Connections that feel calm instead of chaotic. Peace that feels earned without needing a breakdown to prove it. Love that feels natural instead of negotiated. Clarity that feels obvious instead of hunted. Abundance that feels quiet instead of borrowed. Confidence that feels internal instead of performed. Growth that feels embodied instead of explained. Some people won't recognize you this year, and that moment of unfamiliarity is not estrangement. It is confirmation. Confirmation that you have stepped out of old emotional scripts. When you stop repeating cycles, you also stop fitting the mold of the person who once endured them. Growth always changes the face of your presence before it changes the circumstances around you. So when someone says, you seem different, or when they fail to say anything at all, It means your energy is no longer available for the predictable. You have stopped being the echo. You are becoming the voice. Some doors won't reopen. Opportunities that once felt secure may now feel sealed shut. And that is not rejection. It is redirection without apology. Closed doors are not barricades when you've already walked past them. They are punctuation marks at the end of a sentence you were meant to finish. The universe doesn't drag you forward by pushing the new into your hands. It pulls you forward by dissolving the old from your grip. Some desires will dissolve. The ambitions that once burned brightly may now dim softly. Their disappearance is not disinterest. It is recalibration. You are no longer bargaining for emotional currency that expires. You are no longer negotiating for a spark that doesn't originate from you. What is real will not demand urgency to prove itself. It will command stillness to reveal itself. Some memories will feel distant. The ones that once felt loud now feel far away. This distance is not erasure. It is liberation. You are no longer anchored to your history. You are informed by it, not imprisoned by it. The past has become a chapter, not a chain. And the silence you once feared? It has finally become a room you can sit inside without shaking. Because silence is no longer absence. It is perception purified. It is the place where your own signal can be heard, without distortion, without comparison, without negotiation. 2025 delivered the lesson once, with pressure, precision, and a purpose you could not see then. 2026 carries no need for repetition. The circuit is closed. The dial has already shifted. The transformation is not pending, not buffering, not conceptual. It is embodied now, living in your reflexes, your boundaries, your tolerance for truth. So before you leave this moment, anchor it, quietly, firmly, finally, not for applause, not for audience, but for the self who is walking forward without static. Write it as your declaration. I release the weight of 2025, and I am ready to receive the blessings of 2026. Because this time, you are not searching for the music. You are becoming the one who finally lives inside it.